I used to think love could survive anything, distance, time, even silence. But what I didn't know was that sometimes love doesn't die. It just hides behind lies until the truth rips it wide open. My name's Daniel, and for 15 years, I thought my marriage to Claire was unshakable. We built a life together that looked picture perfect from the outside. 2 kids, a house we'd saved years to buy, matching coffee mugs that said his and hers. But perfect things are fragile, and I didn't notice the cracks forming until the night I found her phone glowing. At 2 a.m., the text on the screen wasn't meant for me. It was from someone saved as a simple message. I missed the way you whispered my name last night. For a few seconds, I just stared, frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, some kind of cruel joke. But deep down, I already knew. Claire wasn't working late anymore. She was working on a lie. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I lay beside her, pretending to sleep, feeling the distance between us stretch like a canyon. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, kissed me goodbye, made coffee, smiled. That smile hurt more than the text. Over the next week, I started watching her closer, noticing the tiny details, the extra makeup, the sudden perfume, the phone she guarded like a secret. I didn't want to believe she was capable of this, but every sign screamed otherwise. Then one night, when she said she had to stay late again, I followed her. My hands were shaking the whole drive, headlights cutting through the dark as I trailed her car across town. She didn't go to her office. She went to a small hotel, the kind with neon lights and rooms rented by the hour. I parked a few rows away and watched her meet him, a tall guy with slicked back hair and a smirk that made my blood boil. They laughed, hugged, and disappeared inside. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. That was the moment something inside me broke. Love didn't live in me anymore, just quiet, cold rage. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car outside that cheap hotel, watching the lights flicker through the blinds until Claire finally came out 2 hours later. Her hair was a little messy, her lipstick faded, but she looked happy. I followed her home far enough that she wouldn't notice me, and when she slipped quietly through the front door, I just sat there in the dark driveway, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me sane. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to know everything, the who, the why, the how long. The next morning, she was all smiles again, humming while she made breakfast, acting like she hadn't just spent the night betraying everything we built. I stared at her across the table, every fake laugh cutting a little deeper. "Rough night?" I asked, pretending to be casual. She blinked, caught off guard, then smiled too quickly. "Just tired." Her lie rolled off her tongue so easily it scared me. That's when I decided I wasn't going to blow up and yell. I was going to plan. If she wanted to play games, I'd play better. Over the next week, I started tracking her quietly. I checked her mileage, took pictures of her receipts, even went through the trash. I hated myself for it, but I needed the truth. And sure enough, every clue pointed to the same man, Eric. I found his name on a restaurant bill she'd tried to hide. I searched him online, married, 2 kids, a family man. The kind of guy who probably told his wife he was working late too. The thought made my blood boil. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and be the fool in my own story. Then one night, Claire left her phone on the counter while she showered. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. The messages were there, every secret word, every "I miss you," every lie. But one message froze me cold. It was from Eric. "Next week, then? We'll tell them both. We can't keep pretending forever." My stomach dropped. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something bigger. I didn't know what telling them both meant, but something in my gut told me it wasn't good. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. What if my wife wasn't just cheating? What if she was planning to destroy everything we had left? I couldn't get that message out of my head. "We'll tell them both." The words echoed like a riddle that refused to solve itself. Tell us what? That they were in love? That they were leaving us? Or something worse? Something that would take more than a marriage to recover from. My mind raced, replaying every strange thing Claire had done over the last few months. The late nights, the random cash withdrawals, the phone calls she'd take in the car with the windows rolled up. It all felt like a puzzle I hadn't realized I was part of. I needed answers, so I started digging deeper. I checked our bank statements. Money missing in small amounts every few days. Just enough not to raise alarms. Over time, it added up to thousands. When I confronted her about it casually, she brushed it off as expenses for work. But my wife was a teacher. What kind of classroom needed that much cash? That's when I realized she'd created another account under her maiden name. I only found it because she left a crumpled receipt from the bank in her purse. My hands shook as I typed in the account number online. And there it was, transfers from our savings every other week, all leading to an account marked with one name, Eric Dalton. My stomach turned. It wasn't just an affair. It was a partnership. They were planning something together. I didn't tell anyone, not my brother, not my friends, because I didn't want pity. I wanted the truth. So one night, while Claire was asleep, I opened her laptop and dug through her files. Hidden in a folder labeled Invoices was a document that nearly stopped my heart. A property deed. My name wasn't on it, just hers. And Eric's. They'd bought a house together 20 miles away. A whole new life built on my dime. My vision blurred, rage pulsing through my veins. I sat there staring at their names side by side on that contract, feeling something inside me shift. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it was financial. It was personal, it was total. I realized I wasn't just losing a wife. I was losing everything I'd ever worked for. I closed the laptop and looked at her sleeping face in the dim light, wondering how someone could lie so perfectly. That's when I decided if she was planning her escape, I'd be there waiting at the finish line, but not as the man she left, as the man she never saw coming. From that night on, something inside me changed. I stopped being the confused husband who didn't understand why his wife came home late. I became the man who watched, listened, and waited. Every word she said, every move she made, I analyzed like evidence. I didn't argue with her anymore. I smiled, nodded, and played dumb, because the easiest person to fool is the one who thinks they're already winning. I started building a plan of my own. I copied files from her laptop onto a flash drive. Bank records, emails, that property deed, all of it. I even started recording our conversations on my phone, just in case things ever went too far. But no matter how much I prepared myself, nothing could have readied me for what happened next. One evening, I came home early from work. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. When I walked inside, I heard voices from the living room. One of them was hers. The other was his. Eric. My chest tightened as I stepped closer. They weren't arguing. They were laughing. Like they didn't have a care in the world. I stayed hidden in the hallway, listening. "It's almost done," she said, her voice low but excited. "The house will sell fast, and once the money hits, we can disappear before he figures it out." I froze. Sell the house? My house? The one we built together brick by brick? Eric laughed. "Good. The timing's perfect. I've got someone lined up to buy it under a dummy name. He'll never trace it back." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was theft. They were planning to sell everything I owned and vanish like ghosts. I backed away quietly, heart pounding, barely breathing. When I finally reached the front door, my hand was shaking so bad I could hardly grab the handle. I left before they saw me, sat in my truck, and tried to process what I'd just heard. The woman I loved was plotting to ruin me down to the last cent. I stared at my reflection in the windshield and made myself a promise. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. I was going to let her finish what she started. And when she thought she'd won, I'd take everything back in one move. The next few weeks, I played my role so well, even I started to believe it. I smiled at Claire in the mornings, kissed her goodbye before work, asked about her day like everything was fine. She didn't notice the small changes, the extra files missing from her laptop, the hidden cameras I installed in the living room and office, or the new locks on the safe. I was done being blind. I started moving money quietly, closing accounts she didn't know about, and transferring what I could into one under my brother's name. It was risky, but I couldn't risk losing. Everything while she was busy selling my life, out from under me. I also contacted a friend of mine, Alex, who worked in real estate. Without explaining much, I asked him to flag any listings that matched my address. A week later, he called. "Dan, your house just hit the private market." I thought you said you weren't selling." My stomach dropped. It was real now. They'd done it. Claire was selling the house under her maiden name through a shell agent. Eric had set up. The paperwork was forged to look like my signature was there. She'd been practicing my handwriting for months. I'd seen her doodling once, never realizing what she was doing. Alex offered to report it, but I told him no, not yet. I needed proof that would bury her completely. So I waited and watched. Every night she acted like nothing was happening, cooking dinner, watching TV, telling the kids she loved them. But I could see it in her eyes, guilt hiding behind that perfect smile. Then one evening I caught a break. She left her laptop unlocked while putting the kids to bed, and I opened her email. There it was, a message thread between her and Eric. Buyer confirmed. Transfer by next Friday? Once it's done, we disappear for good. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from adrenaline, because by then I had every file, every message, every video I needed. I wasn't just a husband she betrayed. I was the storm she never saw coming. The next morning I called a lawyer, a quiet, strategic guy I trusted with my life, and told him everything. He didn't say much, just listened and said, "If you're serious about taking her down, we'll do it clean. But once we start, there's no going back." I looked out the window at the woman hanging laundry in the sun, the same woman who had once promised me forever. And I said, "Then let's start." My lawyer, Marcus, didn't waste time. He was one of those calm, razor-sharp types who didn't blink unless he had to. After hearing everything, he leaned back in his chair and said, "She's digging her own grave. Dan, all we have to do is hand her the shovel." He helped me draft a quiet strategy, a plan to protect everything that was legally mine while letting her believe she was still in control. The first step was simple. I transferred the property deed of the house into a trust under my kids' names, effective immediately. She'd have no idea until the day she tried to sell it. The second step, setting a trap with the bank. Marcus arranged for me to be notified. The second any large transaction came through, linked to her forged signature. Every piece of this plan was a ticking clock, and I could feel time closing in. Meanwhile, Claire's behavior changed subtly. She was lighter, almost cheerful. She'd hum while she cooked, check her phone constantly, and look at me like I was invisible. The more she smiled, the calmer I became. Let her believe I was broken. That's when people make mistakes. That Friday, I left work early and parked a few streets over from the hotel she always met Eric at. I watched from a distance, recording her walking in with him one last time. This time she wasn't nervous or hiding. She was confident, almost glowing. That was how I knew the deal was close. The next morning, Marcus called. "Dan, we got a hit. Wire request for $250,000. Sent from your joint account to an offshore one under Eric's name." My chest went tight. "Approve it," I said flatly. "Let it go through." Marcus hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah, I want her to think she's free." I waited for her to come home that night. She kissed the kids goodnight, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat across from me like nothing was wrong. "You okay?" she asked sweetly. I forced a smile. Never better. She had no idea that while she was raising her glass, Marcus was already finalizing the freeze, orders that would stop every account, linked to her and Eric within 24 hours. Their money would vanish into a legal void they couldn't touch. The next morning, when she left for work, I followed her again, but this time she didn't go to school or to the hotel. She drove to the courthouse. My heart started to race. I waited in the car, watching her step out, holding an envelope. And when I saw her walk toward the clerk's office, one word hit me like a punch: divorce. I sat there in my car across from the courthouse, staring through the windshield, as Claire disappeared inside with that envelope. Clutched in her hand, divorce, the word felt strange, like hearing your own name from someone else's mouth. It didn't even make me angry anymore. It just felt hollow. I waited 20 minutes before walking in myself. Had pulled low, pretending to be another face in the crowd. She was at the clerk's desk, her voice calm, polite, rehearsed. When she handed over the paperwork, I caught a glimpse of the form. Petitioner, Claire Reed. My name filled the next line. Respondent, Daniel Reed. My stomach twisted. but I forced myself to read more. Under reason for dissolution, she'd written, irreconcilable differences. But the real gut punch came under financial division. She'd claimed full ownership of our house and joint savings, arguing that I'd voluntarily relinquished rights due to emotional instability. I nearly laughed right there in the lobby. Emotional instability? That was her foundation for stealing everything I'd built. She wasn't just trying to leave me. She was trying to bury me. I slipped out quietly, hands trembling but my mind sharper than ever. I called Marcus from the parking lot and told him everything. He chuckled darkly. Perfect. Let her think she's ahead. Once the paperwork hits, we'll counter with evidence that'll turn this whole thing on its head. That night, Claire acted like nothing had happened. She cooked dinner, kissed me goodnight, and even curled up next to me in bed like we were still in love. I lay there listening to her breathe, thinking about how easy it must be to sleep after destroying someone's life. Over the next few days, I let her keep up the act while I built mine. Marcus filed a counterclaim that would legally freeze the sale, invalidate her forged deed, and list Eric as a co-conspirator in a financial fraud case. Every lie she'd told, every penny she'd taken, it was all documented, wrapped tight, ready to explode in her face. But here's where fate got messy. A week later, Claire came home early, face pale, eyes red. She looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "We need to talk," she whispered. My pulse spiked, but I played it cool. "About what?" She hesitated, her lips trembling. "It's about Eric." I leaned back, pretending to be confused. "What about him?" Her voice broke. "He's gone. He took the money and disappeared." For the first time in months, I smiled, small, cold, and real.
When she said it, "He's gone. He took the money." I had to fight to keep my expression straight. I looked up slowly, acting confused. "What do you mean, gone?" Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Eric disappeared, Dan. His phone's off. His apartment's empty. And that account we were using. It's been wiped clean." I tilted my head. "Account?" She froze. That's when she realized she'd said too much. I mean, she stammered, eyes darting. I just let the silence stretch, long enough to make her squirm. Inside I could feel my pulse pounding, but not from panic, from satisfaction. She thought she'd played me. But she was just now discovering the board was mine all along. "Claire," I said softly, "maybe you should sit down." Her knees buckled, a little as she dropped onto the couch. I sat across from her, keeping my tone calm, careful. "You said we were using an account. That's interesting. Because last week the bank called about a transfer, $250,000, signed by you." Her eyes went wide. "What? No. That was—" I cut her off. "Yeah, Eric's name was on it too. Funny thing is, the money never went through." I watched the color drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You see, banks are weird about fraud. Turns out, when you forge your husband's signature and move joint assets without consent, they don't just let it slide." She covered her mouth, shaking her head. "Dan, please." I stood up slowly. "No, Claire. Don't, Dan, please me. You wanted out. You wanted your new life. Congratulations, it's gone. Every cent, every plan, every lie, gone." She started crying, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. But I didn't feel sorry for her. "Not this time. You destroyed us," I said quietly. "And now you're standing in the wreckage, pretending to be the victim." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The house was silent except for her muffled crying. Then she looked up, eyes wild with panic. "He said he'd handle everything," she whispered. "He said we'd be safe." I frowned. "Safe from what?" Her voice trembled. "From you." That stopped me cold. "Me?" I asked. She nodded weakly. "He said if you ever found out, you'd ruin us both. He said you were dangerous." I stared at her, heart pounding. "Dangerous?" Maybe he wasn't wrong.
The word dangerous echoed in my head long after Claire said it. I just stood there staring at her, unsure whether to laugh or explode. "He told you that?" I asked quietly. She nodded, still crying. "He said you weren't who I thought you were, that you had money hidden somewhere, that you'd done things in the past he could expose." I froze. "What?" She shook her head, trembling. I didn't believe him at first. But he showed me a document, something with your name on it. He said it was proof. My pulse quickened. There was no proof. I had nothing to hide, or so I thought. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. What did he show you, Claire? She hesitated, biting her lip. A contract. Offshore accounts, fake transfers. He said you'd been laundering money through your business. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. I ran a small logistics company. Honest work, small margins, nothing illegal. But somehow, Eric had forged a paper trail to make it look like I'd been committing fraud. I realized then that I wasn't the only one setting traps. Where is it? I demanded. She flinched. I don't know. He kept everything on a flash drive. He said it was insurance in case you turned violent. I laughed. A low, humorless sound. Insurance. He played you, Claire. You weren't his partner. You were his cover? Her crying stopped. She looked up at me, confusion twisting her face. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath. Eric didn't love you. He used you. He forged my name on property deals and transfers, so if it ever blew up, I'd take the fall. You were just the bridge between his lie and my life. Her eyes darted, side to side as if the walls were closing in. No, he wouldn't. He would, I snapped. And he did. I turned away, trying to think, every detail replaying in my mind. Eric hadn't just stolen from us. He'd built his entire scam using our marriage as a shield. And now he was gone, leaving me with the mess. I grabbed my coat and keys. Where are you going? Claire asked through tears. I looked back at her, my voice cold. To find out who the hell your boyfriend really was. She tried to follow, but I stopped her. Stay here, I said sharply. And if anyone calls you that, you don't? Recognize, don't answer. As I walked out the door, a single thought burned in my head like fire. If Eric Dalton thought he could ruin me and vanish, he didn't know who he was dealing with. Tracking Eric Dalton turned out to be harder than I expected, because he didn't exist. Not really. The name, the job, even the address on his old apartment lease were all fake. The landlord said he'd moved in 6 months ago, paid cash and left without notice a week earlier. No forwarding address, no ID, nothing but a set of keys left on the counter and a faint smell of cologne. Still, I wasn't giving up. I pulled favors from old contacts, called in every small debt from people who owed me, and ran his name through databases until one detail finally stuck out. An old traffic citation linked to a car registered under a different alias. Eric Lewis Dalton. That small middle name led me to a file that made my stomach twist. The guy had a record. Fraud, identity theft, embezzlement. He'd been running cons for years, always targeting wealthy couples and vanishing before anyone put the pieces together. The pattern was chilling. He'd seduce one half of the relationship, manipulate the finances, and then set up the other partner to take the blame. He'd done it in Dallas, Denver, and now apparently, me. I sat in my car outside the courthouse parking lot, scrolling through the report, every sentence hammering in the same ugly truth. Claire wasn't his first. She was just his latest pawn. But the worst part came at the bottom of the file. The most recent complaint was from a woman named Melanie Reed. My last name. I frowned, heart pounding. The complaint was 2 years old. Fraud, false identity, financial loss. I clicked through and froze. The picture attached to the file wasn't Claire. It was my sister-in-law, Claire's sister. That's when everything clicked. Eric hadn't just stumbled into my life. He'd been orbiting my family for years, grooming his next target while I was too busy trying to be the perfect husband. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My wife's betrayal wasn't random. It was orchestrated. The man who wrecked my marriage had been studying me long before I ever knew his name. I started the car, my reflection in the windshield hard and unfamiliar. You wanted dangerous? I muttered to myself. You got it. My next call wasn't to Marcus or the police. It was to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Someone who owed me a favor that could make men like Eric disappear. The man I called that night was named Ray Mercer. And he wasn't the type you found in phone books. We'd met years ago, back when my company handled shipments for private security firms, guys who didn't always ask where the cargo came from or where it was going. I'd helped Ray out of a tough situation once, and he'd told me, if you ever need something that can't be done by daylight, Call this number. That night I finally did. He answered on the second ring. You sound like you've been digging in the wrong dirt. Dan, he said with that gravelly calm that always made people nervous. What do you need? I told him about Eric, about the scam, the forged files, the missing money. Ray didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he just said, text me his name, last known address, and anything you've got. I'll make a few calls. I hesitated. Ray, I'm not asking you to hurt him. There was a pause. Didn't say you were. Then he hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every lie, every smile from Claire. Every moment I'd ignored my gut because I wanted to believe she was still mine. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself Ray wouldn't find anything, until my phone buzzed. Unknown number, check your email. I opened it. A single photo downloaded. It was Eric sitting at a bar in Vegas laughing with 2 other men. The timestamp, less than 12 hours old. He wasn't gone. He'd just changed zip codes. I called Ray immediately. You found him? Ray chuckled. Didn't take much. Guys like him leave trails of greed everywhere they go. You want me to bring him in? I hesitated. No, not yet. I need to see him myself. Ray's voice turned serious. Dan, if he conned you this deep, he won't hesitate to pull something worse if he feels cornered. Don't go alone. I stared at the photo again. Eric, alive and smug, living easy off the pieces of my life. I appreciate it, Ray, I said quietly. But this one's personal. I ended the call and sat there in silence, feeling the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. For months, Eric had been moving me like a chess piece, but now I was off the board and coming straight for the king. Vegas looked exactly like I felt inside, bright, fake, and buzzing with danger. I drove straight from the airport to the bar Ray had mentioned, a dive just off Fremont Street, the kind of place where secrets went to die. The neon sign flickered red and blue across the cracked pavement as I stepped inside. The stench of whiskey and regret thick in the air. I spotted him almost immediately. Eric. Same slicked-back hair, same smug posture, holding court like a man who thought the world owed him applause. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I walked closer, every nerve in my body on fire. He didn't see me until I pulled out the chair across from him. Mind if I sit? I asked, voice calm but sharp. His smile faltered for just a second before he laughed. Dan, man, you look rough. Heard things got messy back home. I leaned forward. You mean after you stole everything I had? He shrugged, taking a sip of his drink. Come on, don't be dramatic. You'll bounce back. You're a resourceful guy. My hands clenched under the table. You used my wife, forged my name, and almost tanked my company. You think that's something people bounce back from? He smirked. You make it sound personal. I stared at him. It is. His eyes flickered, sensing the shift in my tone. What do you want, Dan? An apology? I shook my head slowly. No, I want the truth. For the first time, his grin faded. The truth? I nodded. Why us? Why my wife? Why my life? He looked away, the mask cracking. Because she wasn't supposed to pick you. My stomach dropped. What? He leaned in, his voice low and venomous. Claire wasn't my mark at first, you were. Someone paid me to get close, to take you apart piece by piece. I froze. Who? Eric smirked again, that same arrogant spark returning. Ask your brother. My heart stopped. You're lying. He laughed, standing up, tossing a few bills on the table. Maybe, maybe not. But you've got bigger problems. Dan, you're not the only one who wants revenge. Before I could react, he was gone, out the door and swallowed by the Vegas lights. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, the noise of the bar fading into a dull roar. My brother? None of it made sense. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The lies hadn't ended with Claire. They'd just come home to roost. The flight home felt endless. My mind replayed Eric's words on a loop. Ask your brother. I wanted to dismiss it, to tell myself he was lying just to get under my skin. But the way he said it, the calm, confident smirk, it didn't sound like bluffing. My brother Jason and I had been close once. He was older by 3 years, the golden boy in our family. While I built my business, he bounced between startups and schemes, always chasing the next big win. When our parents died, we drifted apart. He wanted to sell the family land, I wanted to keep it. The fight that day ended with words you can't take back. We hadn't spoken since. But now, as I drove to his office, my gut twisted. If there was even a shred of truth to what Eric said, I needed to hear it from Jason himself. When I walked in, he looked genuinely shocked. Dan? Holy hell, man, it's been years. His smile faltered when he saw my face. You okay? I sat down, keeping my voice steady. You know a guy named Eric Dalton? The color drained from his face before he masked it with a smirk. Can't say I do. Why? My jaw tightened. Don't lie to me, Jason. He leaned back, hands raised. All right, slow down. Maybe I've heard the name. What's this about? I stared at him, reading every twitch. He conned me. Used Claire. Stole everything. Jason's expression shifted, half guilt, half fear. Dan, listen, Did you hire him? I snapped. The silence that followed was deafening. He didn't answer. Just rubbed his temples like he was trying to figure out which truth would hurt less. Finally, he said, I didn't mean for it to go that far. My chest tightened. You what? He sighed, looking away. I wanted to scare you, man. You cut me out after Mom and Dad died. You took everything, house, inheritance, business. I just wanted you to feel what I felt. I stood up, shaking my head. So you hired a con artist to destroy my life. He wasn't supposed to touch Claire, Jason said quickly. He was just supposed to rattle you. Get you desperate enough to come to me for help. I didn't know You didn't know? I interrupted. You gave him access to my life. Jason, you invited him in. He slammed his fist on the desk. I made a mistake, he yelled. Yeah, I said coldly. You made mine. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Dan, he's not done. He told me if I talked to you, he'd come for both of us. I paused in the doorway, my blood running cold. Eric wasn't just a ghost from my past anymore. He was still out there, and now he had nothing left to lose. I didn't plan on forgiving Jason, but I couldn't ignore what he said. If Eric was really coming for us, that meant this wasn't over. It was just getting started. The next few days were chaos. I barely slept, constantly checking over my shoulder, scanning unfamiliar cars parked near my house, waiting for a shadow that never came. Claire stayed with her sister, too ashamed to look me in the eye, and honestly, I was grateful for the distance. I needed a clear head. Jason called me every few hours, paranoid and panicked. He's watching me, he said once, whispering from his office. I can feel it. I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, but deep down, I knew better. Eric didn't bluff. 2 nights later, I got proof. My doorbell camera caught a man standing at my gate just past midnight. Baseball cap, hoodie, hands in his pockets. He looked straight into the camera for 3 long seconds before walking away. The police brushed it off as trespassing, but I knew that posture, that smug confidence. It was him. Eric had come back to finish what he started. The next morning, I drove to Jason's place. Found him pacing in the kitchen, eyes bloodshot. He called me, he blurted. Said he wants to meet. Said if we don't show, he'll leak everything. Emails, fake transfers, the works. He still has the flash drive. Dan, he's got proof we all go down together. I clenched my jaw. Where? The docks tonight. My mind raced. The docks were miles from town. Quiet, isolated. The kind of place where bad things happened without witnesses. You're not going alone, I said. Jason nodded nervously. You really think he'll show? He wants control, I said flatly. He'll show. That night, the air felt heavier than usual, the kind that pressed against your chest. We parked near the water, the faint hum of cargo ships in the distance. Then we saw him, leaning against a car, hands in his pockets, like this was all just a business meeting. Eric smiled when we approached. Brothers reunited, he said coolly, touching. I could see the glint of something metallic in his hand. Not a weapon, a flash drive. Everything you want, he said, and everything that can destroy you. I took a step forward. You're done, Eric, he smirked. No, Dan, you are. Then a loud crack split the air, one gunshot, echoing across the docks. Jason screamed. And in that instant, everything went black. The sound of that gunshot still rings in my head. When I opened my eyes, the world was spinning. Flashing red lights, the echo of water slapping the docks, the taste of blood in my mouth. Jason was on the ground beside me, clutching his shoulder, groaning in pain. Eric stood a few feet away, gun still smoking. that sick smile stretching across his face. "Didn't think it'd end like this, huh, Dan?" he taunted. I forced myself to my knees, the air thick with gunpowder and salt. "You don't have to do this," I rasped. He tilted his head. "Sure I do. You took my money, ruined my escape. You think I'd just walk away?" I glanced toward Jason. He was pale but alive, blood seeping through his fingers. "You set all this up," I said, spitting out the words. "The money, the lies, Claire, everything." Eric laughed. "Don't act surprised. People are easy, Dan. You, your wife, your brother, all predictable. Everyone's got a price." I could feel something inside me snap, a cold clarity that burned hotter than rage. Slowly, I stood up. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "Not everyone." His smirk faltered just long enough for me to move. I lunged, grabbing his arm as the gun fired again, the shot ringing out into the night. The struggle felt endless, metal scraping, boots sliding on wet concrete until the gun skidded across the ground and disappeared into the dark. We both froze for a second, breathing hard. Then Eric swung at me. I ducked, drove my shoulder into his chest, and we went over the edge of the dock, crashing into the freezing water below. The shock stole my breath. I came up gasping, barely catching a glimpse of him, thrashing beside me before a dark shape sank beneath the surface. I dove once, twice, nothing. By the time I climbed back up, headlights were flashing, police. Ray must have tracked my phone. They pulled Jason out, rushed him to an ambulance, and dragged the river for hours, but they never found Eric's body. Maybe he drowned. Maybe he didn't. A week later, I stood alone outside the house Claire had once called our forever, the place where every lie began. She'd filed her own confession, exposing everything she and Eric had done. The house was in my name again, but it didn't feel like home. Jason recovered slowly, and though we barely spoke, I could see the regret in his eyes. As for me, I rebuilt, quietly, carefully. But some nights, when the wind rattles the windows, I swear I hear footsteps by the water, and a faint voice laughing in the dark. Maybe ghosts don't haunt places. Maybe they haunt the choices that made them.